Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Bits and Bytes. On today's episode, we have a special guest, Naomi. Naomi, if you want to quickly introduce yourself to all of our listeners.
Hi, my name is Naomi Van Halteren. I am the CEO and founder of a company called LunaVR, and I'm from Vancouver, but I'm presently sitting in the UK right now. So, hi.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to join us. I know the time zone difference is quite a lot, but I'm glad we were able to make it work. So I just wanted to start off, tell us a little bit about LunaVR.
Yeah, so what we do is I'm a registered nurse. I created the company because I really saw a need with my patients. VR in Vancouver is a really big growing sector. I'd never tried it before and quickly realized the power that VR has. So what we do at Luna is we want to help change your vaccine experience and therefore change your needle experience. So most people's fears are related to the first time they get a vaccine, and often this is children or some adults who like to delay the process. And if you have a first initial fear of a needle and a vaccine, it kind of stays with you. So some kids don't have any psychological effects. Other kids have multiple physiological and psychological effects. So that could be anything from your heart racing the minute you see it to people faint and seizure. So we're trying to use VR to change that process and make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, and so how did you get the idea of using VR? Have you had a lot of experience working with VR in the past, or gaming with VR? I know there's a lot of multi-uses now for VR technology. So how did that become an inspiration?
No, I had absolutely no experience with VR. To be honest, I always worked as a labor and delivery nurse, so I absolutely loved, hard 12-hour shifts. Had never thought about VR other than I was worried because I always get motion sick. So I thought, it wouldn't work for me. I stopped doing that job and became a vaccine nurse full time. And one day after a long shift of doing the same thing over and over and having a lot of adults really complain and not just complain, but it was hard to see so many, I'm not going to lie, it was more men. But to see so many men terrified to sit in a seat and get a needle was pretty shocking. So I'd been at work all day. My husband had won a Oculus Go, and he was like, "Oh, just try it. And I was like, "No, I'm tired. Leave me alone." And then I was sitting on my balcony in Vancouver, and he put it on, and I was in a beach water scene. There was some alien beside me and a ton of moons, and right away, number one, I forgot I was on a balcony, which is kind of terrifying. But also, I after work, how you're stressed and your shoulder, everything's tense. I realized my whole body relaxed, and I was like, whoa! I never thought about VR as a tool to help actually relax your body. So yeah, then I started doing research to see if people were using it. Do doctors and nurses use this? And so.
So the only thing stopping you from becoming an entrepreneur sooner was your husband didn't win any contests.
Exactly. Yeah. He's too cheap to buy it on his own.
That's awesome. So what is the VR experience like then for patients that are using LunaVR? Can you give us a step-by-step of what the procedure would be like?
Yeah. So I really wanted it to match what normal nurses and doctors do and what patients go through in a vaccine procedure. We don't want to do a 5-minute lead up to this, vaccine that's making people terrified. So the whole process is about 90 seconds. And what that does is we give you time to get to know what VR looks like. So if kids have never been in it, they don't really look around because they're so in awe, and adults will either look around or fidget or whatever. And so we first I wanted kids to feel empowered when they get a vaccine. As we've all seen with COVID, herd immunity is really important. People who get vaccines and, kids that go through it need to know that they're helping their loved ones, they're helping their community. And so I wanted them to get superpowers. Mm-hmm. So living in BC, I had to put mountains in it. I hate winter. So I love the idea of it being like a winter wonderland and then melting it into summer. And another key thing was I wanted, when the character in VR touched you, it to match what was happening in real life. And that's key so that kids aren't jumping out the way and we could give a heads up. So they're sort of fighting off these snow monsters. The first cold, which is a snowflake in their arm, is when we do an alcohol swab, which cold is often the sensation. And then the burning is the hardest part of vaccines to stop because as everyone remembers, the minute it goes in your muscle, it's like, oosh, it's not actually the needle going in, it's that burning sensation. So we found that people have already studied this for 19 years. The more input your brain has, the less it can focus on pain. It's basically why, if your one foot's hurting, you stomp on your other foot is the idea behind it.
It's distraction.
Yeah, exactly. It's distraction. And so we kind of made it so that the minute the burning starts is when the most visual and sound effects happen. And, the kids can kind of be like, whoa, something else is happening. And then they are way more distracted, which has been really cool.
Yeah, no, this is really well thought out. I mean, I personally got to experience LunaVR myself, and it's definitely like beautiful inside, like the characters and everything. Speaking of the characters, Luna, the dog in LunaVR is actually inspired from your own dog, right?
Yeah. Found that dog, and we were on like a 7-month hiatus. Me and my husband just quit everything because we started working really young, and we went and traveled, and we found her in Mexico. So, I always say she's like tied up outside a restaurant, and we didn't steal her, which everyone thinks. She was for adoption, and so anyway, we've used her now as a character.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So,
that's awesome. I was just gonna ask, like, do you have the same kind of storyline, whether it's an adult or a child? Do you guys run with the same thing, or is it different?
Yeah. So we teamed up with Centennial College, which was kind of funny. They saw me speak at a health tech event, and I was actually trained for nursing in Toronto at Ryerson, and Centennial College is the sister college to the nursing school I went to. So that was kind of cool. And so we teamed up to create through their WinTech program, which is like technical development students, different adult experiences. So there's some cool ones that they came up with. Like one was like because I always love the BC vibe because BC's the best. So one was like a fire pit in front of you, and like these adults are having different conversations, and it's kind of more funny. And then the people beside you touch different parts of your arm, because it's also, as an adult, we get more than just one vaccine. We can often, I don't know if you've gone traveling anytime, and you get like 4, and you get yellow fever, which is super painful. So we're still developing those, but it's definitely going to be different for adults. And the storylines that we've started, just to make sure that, they're having more fun and adult humor. We should have a little bit more adult humor.
Yeah, that's definitely cool. I would definitely love to try it out once you have the adult version released. Like, that sounds awesome. Yeah. So I know that LunaVR, then, it's your first company, like your first outside of being an RN. So like being a first time entrepreneur, like what were some of the challenges that you found that you were facing, like that you didn't expect, or like were something that you were expecting down the road?
Yeah. I think when I first became an entrepreneur, I looked around and was like, why does it take everyone so long? Like, I don't understand. Don't you just like do like, because I work 12-hour shifts. I was like, I get so much done in 12 hours, like what is taking people so long? And then I didn't realize that like life happens, and like when you have a normal scheduled job, sometimes you can't sacrifice to do things in life that you would normally do, or they give you a specific time off. But when you're an entrepreneur, you're doing this all the time. It's exhausting. It's a lot of self-motivation. So I think, number one, I didn't realize how hard it was. I very naively didn't understand that. Also, I didn't realize actually, I was, I've met everyone here through Launch Academy. And I remember one day I walked in and I was like, everyone was very happy. And I was like, I'm so down, like entrepreneur. Like, what the heck? Why is everyone so happy all the time? And so the guy sitting across from me, I was like, I don't know you, but like, do you ever get really down about like starting a company? And he was like, oh yeah, it's it's called the, like, I didn't remember the term. I think it's entrepreneurship blues or something. And I was like, what is that?
Startup
like,
depression. There's lots of names for it.
Yep. I was not expecting that. So you get these huge highs, things are moving, people love you, they want to see your stuff, and then you get like this, like one person will make a comment and you're like, oh my gosh, because it's so close to home. So those are two major things that I think I didn't think about.
So it's really interesting because like like obviously in the past you were a registered nurse, and I think I'm not over dramatizing today when I say nurses are heroes, right? Like, and a lot of them, especially the ones in the ER, they're in high pressure situations. Like how, and I don't need a direct comparison, but just kind of like the experience of working both roles. Like, how do you compare it? What's similar? What's different?
Um, Critical thinking is huge. So, and I always did high risk pregnancies, so a lot of pregnancy complications and labor and delivery, so birthing babies. I think in nursing, you have standards and protocols, so you have to think critically and you have to like do something fast, but you also have kind of like an underlying rule book. In entrepreneurship, I kept asking people like, okay, so am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do this? And people kept saying like, you can do whatever you want. And I hated that to start with.
Yeah.
My mentor is Dan Berger, and he kept being like, stop calling me about questions. Like, you can do what you want. No, I want like the rule book where you don't step outside the line. So that's definitely a big difference.
Yeah.
So.
What about the stress part? Because you mentioned, the depression and stuff like that, but I'm sure like being a nurse isn't a walk in the park either.
Yeah, that's very true. The highs and lows, I feel like in nursing, you get a lot more highs and lows in a particular shift. So, you're having a 12-hour shift, so you sleep, you start your day, you have so much energy, it's going well, and then you could have an emergency C-section or something happen to a baby, and then you go low, and then you're running into another room to help another mom out, so you're going high. Versus I found with entrepreneurship, it's not as drastic because I'm not resuscitating babies, but you can still have the same highs and lows in like one day. Like literally you could have so much excitement from one person or a company that, is interested. And then at the same time, I had a doctor who told me that he didn't have problems with needles. So he didn't understand how his patients would. And like, I was so rattled by like, how can you be a doctor and not understand? Again, like the highs and lows, but not as like, life-saving kind of stuff.
Yeah. Because I mean, my hypothesis is that the issue that outside people looking in that don't understand is like, oh, you're your own boss. Like if you're working too hard, just give yourself a break, right? But I think in my experience of working with startups, like a lot of where like the startup depression we come from is because we, as entrepreneurs, like we never leave work, right?
Yeah.
Like the problems, and I think work-life balance has a lot to do with this, but when you're at a hospital, you leave the hospital, you can kind of try and place it in a box, literal or figurative, right? Whereas when you're running your own business, it's truer even now because we're all in our offices, in our houses, in our whatevers, but like we can't put it away in a box and just close that door. It's constantly on. And I think that's like a really interesting discussion that I like to have, because I think not even today, even though we have labels for it, like not enough people talk about this part of the journey, because I think outside looking in, even people that are not part of the startup community, like my buddies, like they always look at me and go like, oh, what you're doing is so interesting. Like you can control your own hours and all the perks that come with this lifestyle. But like, I think that's what's fascinating for me about this COVID situation, is because when people have started to work from home, that sort of seeps into them too, right? Like people who are like bankers or financial experts, now they work at home and they realize like, hey, I can't just shut off at 5, right? So like that's always been really interesting to me.
I think too, that part of like, you're always working, but then also it's your whole life. So like my partner is like, well, what did you do today? And like, we had to, maybe that's a great point, is like when you start a business, like you have to say to your partner, like, it was like he was judging me. Like, what did you do today? Like, did you do enough? And I felt like I was always defending myself, but he's more interested. And then your family wants to know what you're doing. And then like, if something didn't go well, then everyone knows. And yeah, entrepreneurship is, you just gotta be a tough cookie. I did a lot of paperwork today, and my husband was like, you look really happy. And I was like, yeah, when we make it big, I'm just going to be the office manager for a company. Someone else can be the CEO.
You gotta do what you enjoy, right?
Yeah.
Can you just touch a little bit on maybe like family support? Because I think we like Bits and Bytes, we like to dive more into just the surface level. So what about like, how does entrepreneurship kind of affect your husband? And you mentioned a couple of times, and maybe other parts of your family.
Yeah, so husband-wise, he's so supportive. So I think it's way easier to start a company when there's a bit of a team. So he couldn't do it full-time. A bit of backstory to me, I have type 1 diabetes, and I also have multiple sclerosis. So I personally cost over $100,000 a year in medication. So no matter what, we've always kind of relied on him and insurance to have, money to support my medications alone. So there was never a point at which we could just both like quit our jobs and, jump into this fully. So I quit my job right away and just did it. But he's pretty wonderful. He's got an engineering background. That's how his brain works. So he's really loved how things have been developed. I'm the people person and, the sort of, I'm learning to get better at sales. I'm not a pushy person. It's against my character. So, and he's a bit more pushy. So, things like that are really good. I think when you start something that other people can see and believe in, it's way easier. So my sister works in Cisco. She's an account manager. Actually, she just got promoted and she now has the city of Toronto, which is huge.
Sweet.
Wow. Congrats.
Yeah.
Sure.
Cisco has been incredibly positive about what we're doing. And my sister just like promotes me to everybody. So we ended up being highlighted as a company that was using health tech for good in Cisco's Innovation Center in Toronto. And that all came from my sister being like super, she's like, you need to meet my sister. Look what she's doing. So, really supportive and great. But I also feel very lucky. Like my husband's had a great job. We started working when I was 17. And so, yeah, we're pretty stable right now, but you always have that pressure where you're like, eesh, like it could all crumble.
Awesome. Yeah. So I just had a few more questions then. So, now that you've been working with like VR technology and like med tech, do you see like in your own personal thoughts, like, do you think there's a future for VR technology, like in other practices maybe, or even like other, I'm not sure. So I'm not super familiar with the medical field, but like, how do you think VR can impact the medical industry?
I think one of the best ways VR helps is great distraction tools. So I think it's really important for medical professionals to remember that it's a tool, but also to remember that like it is so incredible for training. So a perfect example of this is when you train to scrub in the OR, you do you have a teacher beside you, you watch them scrub, which is where you're gowned up and you pass instruments and you're in between the doctor and the nurse who's not sterile. So if something goes wrong, you're there putting sutures on, it's very, very intense. And so the training for that is you watch someone do it once, they stand beside you and you do it awkwardly. And then you do another one by yourself and then they just watch you do one. Well, there's something called, so when you're having a baby, if someone goes really, really wrong and you can't stop bleeding, they basically will take out your uterus. So it's called a hysterectomy. The training for the hysterectomy was they handed me the tools in normal, like not sterile. And I just looked at the tools and was like, okay, I've memorized the tools. If the doctor asked them, I just passed them. Like, that's not like, when you're in an emergency situation, that's terrible. Well, my first C-section ever by myself, when you've had a C-section before, if you have too many contractions, the lining of your uterus can open. It's called abruption, and it can kill mom and baby. So it's very, very scary. Wow. That happened my first C-section. So normally if you can't stop the bleeding, that turns into a hysterectomy. And the first time I ever tried VR for nursing training, I was like, oh my God, I would have died for this in nursing school and when you're, when you become a full-time nurse, because the first catheter you put in someone is some poor patient who doesn't know that it's your first time and you just, wing it. So training's incredible. Distraction. And like with COVID and, how much we're all going to have to be social distancing now. Like if you think about people who still have to get surgeries and kids who have to go for surgeries, like we used to bring them into the hospital and do a tour and, we try to take away the fear of people in masks, and get them to feel comfortable. Well, that's not a reality. Moms who are having babies at one point this year couldn't even have their partners with them. Like, so VR is like amazing for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I have heard like some stories of like new med tech coming out, especially like VR medical training.
Yeah.
And it seems like, like you experienced it yourself. So I hope that it does become more of like a popularized like method of teaching. Cause, I think especially now with like COVID, like you see a lot more like retail stores or like different businesses really upping their technology game just to keep up with what's happening around the world. So hopefully like, things start rolling the ball, especially in the medical field. Yeah.
When you're introducing Luna to people in different medical fields, whether it's nurses or doctors or et cetera, like, do you find that there's a stigma about VR?
Yeah. So the first thing is that people haven't tried it recently. So I don't like the first VR I ever actually did try was my husband had a drone and I put on like the goggles where you really crappy ones and you can control it and it makes you feel nauseous.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people right away are like, oh, well, it's going to be dizzying. It's going to make kids feel sick or adults.
Mm-hmm.
I find that then you get the opposite where you get like, so the Rand Goldman's like the head of Emerge at BC Children's Hospital, and he also runs their VR pain clinic. So he is like ecstatic about VR and like what it can do and knows the benefits. So I kind of find you get both sides. Some are really like hesitant, and then others are like, if they're tech people, a lot of nurses don't want to like they don't believe in themselves that they can do it. Like, so if they have trouble using a cell phone, like they're an older nurse, then they're not going to want to try a VR headset. But we created it to be like, you literally turn it on and connect it, and then it stays connected all day so that you can do patient after patient with one click of a button. And that was number one for time efficiency, but also like, I didn't want VR and the tech to be a barrier to even try something that could really help people. So,
yeah. And like, what's really been like the breakthrough for people like that, in your opinion, getting them to actually try? Because I know there's, like, depending on who it is, some people would be nervous about technology. I also think like the way that VR has been marketed thus far, like, there's a lot of gaming and there's a lot of like, oh, this is like a toy versus like this is actual real world functionality, especially when we get into training and stuff like that, right? Like, what do you think is the breaking point for people to actually give it a shot as a serious thing, not just like, oh, I'm going to put this on and check out this magical world for a sec?
Yeah, I think number one is so before I even actually started the company, and I think this is really important for any entrepreneur, I surveyed over 100 healthcare professionals in all realms. So I did blood technicians, doctors, nurses from all different areas. I wanted people who worked with babies, kids, older adults. And these are all the questions I asked, like, would you use VR? What are the barriers to you using it? Do you believe it could change how quickly you give a needle? So for example, if I get a patient who's scared of needles, a needle should take 90 seconds, but you could spend like 5 to 10 minutes fighting with someone, and it's horrible. Like, as a nurse, it's like really stressful. Like, I'm sweaty, you're sweaty, everyone's sweaty. It's not like a fun experience because everyone's so stressed out. So I think it's really important we do demos, which I think is key. I think the more VR grows and expands, the more everybody in VR will benefit. I also think research. So they've been studying it for 19 years, which most healthcare practitioners don't know. There's been, it used to be a huge computer that you had to have cords and you're connected. So that's obviously going to be a quick barrier because they don't want to spend the money and they don't want to have all this stuff in their way. With how great computers are and, will continue to be, they're so small and compact and mobile now that, once they actually try it, they see the reaction from kids and how much it can change, and they have the evidence behind it. I find people start to soften a little bit towards like, okay, well, let's try it then. So I also have a big passion for this. So it's like, I personally take a needle every time I eat. So I'm a human pincushion. I have given thousands of needles. Like, I'm an absolute expert, and I really, really just want to change kids' first introduction into needles, and then adults who have had negative experiences, to help them not stress about a vaccine for 2 weeks, but instead be like, okay, I know I can cope with this. It's going to be like it's not going to be fun, but it's not going to be like a fun procedure, but it's also going to be like fun in the way of like, let's see if we can try something new. So I'm a bit, excited about it, which sometimes helps.
Well, I love the way that LunaVR is going to be changing a lot of the perspective of like, being scared of even just like any medical procedure. Like, okay, the way that a lot of people have these fear of dentists, like all these sharp objects, like, I can see it like going into like dental technology. Like, like if I'm getting a tooth pulled out, like I would love to just have a VR headset on, just like in my own world while it's all happening. Like
I hate the dentist. Like with that, I get that one. No, like no problem.
Well, they already give us sunglasses, right? Like I guess it's for splash, or I don't really know what they give us sunglasses for.
I always thought it was for the light, like the light that they pull over.
I don't know. I wouldn't mind a headset. I mean, like they also have those TVs up at the top, right? Like to distract you. So, TV's like what, $300? So
yeah, and it's the noise, right? I think that's the hardest part. Is like the VR it's just taking over everything in your body versus just like, I hate the dentist. So staring and then she's talking to you, and I'm just like, I don't want to see you. I just want to pretend that I'm not here right now.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to see these like sharp drills up in my face.
It's the sound too. It's all the senses.
Yeah, but VR just encloses you out, so you go into Zen.
Did we just expose the Luna expansion?
Oh no!
Yeah, no. That's like our number one question is dentistry, and I'm like, well, I need to get investment. We can.
Awesome. Yeah. So I just have a couple more questions then. Like, hey, so now that we're talking so much about like med tech and stuff, okay, let's say that you had all the resources available to you. If you could imagine a piece of technology to help benefit practitioners, doctors, nurses, what would it be? Like, what would you imagine? It doesn't have to be limited to VR technology, but like, something that you see is a big problem right now in the industry that, needs to be addressed, kind of similar to, fear of needles, and that's how Luna came out.
I think there's like, depending on what type of person you are in patient. So, if you're someone who's healthy and you're not chronically ill, I think something that puts information all together. So it seems like you're always seeing this med tech where it's like, hey, you should be able to walk into a walk-in clinic and that information be with you and on you or in the, however they're putting it, wherever they're putting it, that it's safe and secure, obviously. But that if you then had to go to emergency, you're not then recounting every drug you've had or that random allergic reaction. Like these are things that are like prehistoric. We should be having all that information very easily, readily available. For chronic health, so like for me, I have a whole diabetes team. I have a MS specialist I see. I have an infusion every 6 months. So for me, I think something relaxing when I go to those clinics and appointments. So like, for example, with MS, so I had a huge attack in January. I actually lost the ability to walk for 2 months. So I had to get treatment for that. And they basically took all the plasma out of my body. So I did 5 days of continuous plasma transfusions, which is not a fun experience. But, you kind of get like, because you're going in every day and you're getting needles, and people are like, oh, well, you're so good with needles. I actually was like getting panicky in the middle of them. And I was like, this is when I was like, okay, yeah, the VR is amazing. VR is really great for quick procedures, and they're still working on VR for long-term procedures. Yeah. But that is one that I would love because, we forget what people go through. So you look at someone, you have no idea that they have health complications. And as a nurse who hasn't had a break, has, really busy and like having tons of patients, sometimes we actually forget to just like stop and think what they're going through. And so maybe you could have a really cool technology that kind of, I don't know, it relaxes you and puts you in a good state of mind before you even walk into the room, and somehow connects what that state of mind or what you're thinking about or your biggest concerns to the practitioner you're about to see. So it just like flows a little bit more easily. But to imagine what that would be like, I have no idea. So
no, I love that you're always focusing more on like the patient experience as well, but also considering like, your coworkers and your nurses and your peers as well. Like it is a two-way street, and it's amazing that,
completely.
Awesome. And then I guess my last question is, generally we kind of ask this for all of our Bits and Bytes guests. If you could create your dream team, so you can choose from like celebrities, historians, maybe like kings or gods, it doesn't matter, no, boundary whatsoever. But if you could create your dream team, let's say about 3 to 5 people, like who would they be and why did you select those people?
Ugh.
Putting you on the spot a little bit here.
Yeah, so if money wasn't an issue and I could just do this job with like my dream people, my first one would be like still my husband, because we work really well together, and it's a joy to see your partner. So I got married at 19. I was a little baby getting married, and it's been 8 years. I'm 27, but it's just, there's some things that he does where you're like, wow, I forgot, I'm so impressed by this, or I love you for this. So I would love to keep working with him. My sister, that one I was talking about at Cisco, Sarah is her name, and she's a powerhouse. Like, she's like the biggest advocate. She loves what she does, and we laugh like no tomorrow. So she would definitely be on my team. Celebrities, like my celebrity crush has always been Kevin Hart.
Oh yes, Kevin Hart.
I love Kevin Hart. He's so short and I'm so tall. I'm 5'11", and I just would love to sit beside him. And I just think, I think he'd be really funny to work with.
You can sell some software too.
Yeah. He for that trip we did, we listened to his book on audio, and he's reading it, and it was like 22 hours or something of him reading, and I was just dying the whole time.
He gave me the stress relief.
The
stress relief ball.
Yeah. And then I'd want someone who was like, a shark, like someone who would like take control and really do it. But I'm trying to think of someone nice who's like that. I don't know. Who's a female? Yeah. Could be a male too. But who's like a female powerhouse, and I don't know.
I'm trying to remember the names from like Shark Tank, because that's like the first thing comes to my mind when you said shark. And I'm like
Darlene,
Shark Tank.
Yeah, Darlene, I think is her name. But yeah, I don't know. I think that maybe that's just it. Kevin Hart, my husband, and my sister.
Dude, Kevin Hart is a great addition. We had another guest, I forgot who it was, but they were like, I would want The Rock on my team. Like, what about Kevin Hart? Like, they're the power duo. They'd be amazing together.
Well, this episode, I thought of another one that would be great, because you said reality doesn't matter. So I would want Iron Man.
Yeah. Oh. But are you meaning like the real Iron Man, or like Robert Downey Jr.? Because they're two.
No, I need the brains and the multiple personality, and all the craziness that comes with that, and the jet engines.
Wouldn't you say Bruce Banner might be a safer choice here? Because
safe. I don't know about. Kevin Hart's gonna need to play mediation.
So I was just thinking like Spider-Man, because I love Spider-Man, but I don't think he can do that much brain-wise.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I love these answers. Yeah, so that's it for us, I think. Thank you so much, Naomi, for joining us on this episode of Bits and Bytes. I know we got to miss out on the food challenge that we were looking so forward to.
I throw up so easily. I was like, I'm not doing food.
Well, I guess it's a good blessing in disguise then. The timing. But yeah, thank you so much, Naomi. I'm really glad that you joined us for this session today. And for those of you that are interested in learning more about LunaVR, we will be sharing her contact information and some websites available that's related to Luna, and you can learn more about it. And if you want to connect directly, Naomi, is there any way that if someone wants to reach out with any questions, is there a preferred way that they can reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely. It's my full name. So it's naomi.vanhalteren@gmail.com. You can do my personal email there, and I'll get it really quick. So.
All right. Yeah, thanks so much again. All right.
Thanks, Naomi.
Thanks for having me.